Welcome to AI Tools for Practicing Lawyers, practical, no-nonsense guidance to help attorneys put AI power to work in their practice right now.
AI is everywhere right now, and lawyers are getting into real serious trouble using it. Hallucinated cases, bad filings, ethical landmines. They're even making judges get into trouble because the judges are citing the hallucinated cases. So I thought, before we go any further on this podcast, we should bring in someone who understands this from 30,000 feet. So our guest from today is Professor Nancy Rapoport, who is the co-author of A Short and Happy Guide to Artificial Intelligence and Legal Ethics. Welcome aboard, Nancy.
Thank you very much, Ron. It's good to
right.
be here.
And I'm Ron Drescher.
And I'm Heather Gardner.
All right. So, Nancy, how did you get started learning about AI and decide I want to be the AI Appleseed spreader of the faith around the country?
Well, one of my best friends is Joe Tiano, who is the other author of this book. And Joe and I have been writing articles and working together for, over a decade now. And we started reading about AI and thought, this is new. We should study it more. So Joe and I have written a ton of articles involving law firms and artificial intelligence. And West Academic asked us to write a book for law students that we think is also really useful for law firms.
So is this book initially intended for law students?
It is. What I'm hoping is law schools all over the country are going to have to start teaching law students how to use AI responsibly. And we think this book is one of the books that could help law students understand the issues.
So you're on the ground here.
Yes.
Are law students somewhat terrified that all the first-year associate positions are going to go to Harvey AI?
We actually, I was speaking at the University of Denver last week about just this issue, and I said, for law students to feel really comfortable, they need to be more valuable than a Harvey seat license. They have to be able to add value. Joe and I wrote an article on how law firms are going to change shape because the billable hour doesn't make sense in a lot of perspectives anymore. So the traditional I'm going to do a little diagram for the visual. Pyramid model of law firms is going to go away for a lot of law firms. The law students should be nervous and they have to have skills.
All right. And Heather, are you hearing some rumblings in the paralegal community that maybe we're not going to be needed anymore?
I think that conversation has been going on for a couple of years, but I think everyone has the common sense to know that paralegals and support staff will be used differently, but will still be necessary.
I mean, I have a theory about a lot of different things that we're going to talk about a little bit later. I'm going to want your take on it. And, here's a little spoiler. I don't think it's going to change that much.
I think is going to be a fun conversation.
But I don't really think, and I'll explain why when we get to that segment. So, all right. So, Nancy, one last thing about the book.
Yeah.
What do you want the lawyers to walk away with after reading it?
Like to see lawyers be able to identify hot risk areas so that they can come up with ways to work around that and not get sanctioned for doing stupid stuff.
Oh, listen, that would be success enough, right? To keep lawyers out of hot water. I'll always raise my hand for that to happen. So Nancy and I are on a panel together. We're going to be speaking at the Bankruptcy Bar Association for Maryland in May. And I had a light bulb go on when I got an email from Patty Jefferson, who is, to me, like the superstar of the panel. And, she was talking about how they use Harvey AI at Miles and Stockbridge. They pay $1,000 a month per user. And I thought, it's great that big law have steering committees and IT committees and training committees and all of this different infrastructure at the top so that the rank and file lawyers in that firm can have a trust that the tools they're using and the training they're getting are going to keep them out of trouble and really going to make them better lawyers. And then I thought, Solos and small firm lawyers and even mid firm lawyers, they don't have that. And that means that there's a trust gap in the profession. That's really a pretty serious thing. So how do you feel that lawyers can deal with this trust gap?
The more they understand how AI works and the more they build in safeguards, remember the ethics rules require us to have certain ethical safeguards when we practice. If we're supervising lawyers, it's Rule 5.1 in most states. If we're supervising non-lawyers, it's Rule 5.3. So it doesn't matter if you're a solo with a single assistant or the biggest mega firm, there have to be safeguards in place before people start using this tool. But the example that I love to give is using AI is no different from giving a chainsaw to a toddler. It could go right, but it's not likely to go right unless there are guardrails around it, like it being, for a toddler, a toy chainsaw. Yeah.
So what's a good resource for lawyers to refer to if they want to become a little bit more educated and about AI?
Well, one
Besides
of
your
the
book.
ways, in addition to the book and to listening to your podcast, which has really good advice, those are two good resources. I think it's important for lawyers to keep track of all of the ways that humans make mistakes, because if they're not reading the sanctions opinions, they're not scared enough. If they're not scared enough, they're not going to have guardrails.
Now, Heather, you're the earliest adopter I know of paid AI. Nancy, Heather started with ChatGPT paid version in 2022.
Nice.
And I was like so impressed with that. What are you seeing? I mean, you're seeing lawyers in the trenches day in and day out. What kind of conversations are you having with them about using AI?
Not many.
Not many conversations?
Not
or-
many.
Really?
Not many of the attorneys that we work with are utilizing AI for their practice, or if they are, they're not talking to me about it.
Why do you think that is?
I think I think that many attorneys are afraid of it still and don't use it. And they only hear about the cases like the sanctions that, have happened. I think the last count I saw in January was there had been 729 instances of hallucinated citations and cases, people that had been sanctioned and attorneys that had been sanctioned for that. I think that has a lot of them cautious, but we're also in a field of law in bankruptcy where attorneys are more cautious, and rightfully so, but they do need to understand how to use AI. It can be so helpful for their business, for their practice, like we talk about all the time on this show, but there is a lot of hesitation.
I had a conversation with a very successful attorney friend of mine this morning who is Jetsons level and has always been Jetsons level. And he was saying a lot of derogatory things about lawyers who are Flintstones level. And my feeling is, in light of the trust gap, I look at Flintstones level lawyers as people who kind of recognize that they don't have the information they need to use AI responsibly. And so we should look at them. We should say, good for you for being prudent. But let's start with these breadcrumbs. Nancy, what do you think about that? Am I giving those lawyers too much slack?
No, I think you have to ease people into it. Now, my spouse tried AI once, didn't like the results, and has sworn never to use it again. Although his variation on that is, why don't you ask Claude about this and see what you can come up with? So Jeff will let me ask Claude, but he's sworn off AI. So part of it is we need the Flintstones level lawyers to have an encouraging experience so that they're willing to slowly move up the cartoon ladder to Simpsons.
That's what this podcast is really designed to do.
Yes.
It's designed to help lawyers move through the Flintstones, Simpsons, Jetsons spectrum and be able to use AI in a way that's really meaningful in their practices. So, okay, now I want to talk a little bit about ZettaJet. First of all, how did you get involved in ZettaJet, and what is ZettaJet?
ZettaJet is a Chapter 7 out in the Central District of California. I got involved during COVID. I'm a fee examiner in my spare time. There was a group of people that hadn't hated me before, but I've solved that. I'm a fee examiner. That fixes it. And I've been a fee examiner in some of the biggest cases in the country, like Caesars and Toys R Us. But I got invited to be a fee examiner in a, wait for it, Chapter 7 case
Crazy.
converted from an 11. And at this point, we are now looking at the 11 fees behind the Chapter 7 fees. But I was asked to be the fee examiner in that case, so I file regular reports with the court. That's my job, is to make the court's job easier. We review the fees. We use Legal Decoder, which happens to be Joe Tiano's company. We use Legal Decoder to use algorithms to get the fees into shape where I can then look at specific issues I want to look at. Then I file reports. Well, every time I file a report, I have to update all of the fees that have been awarded and all of the orders that have approved those fees. So recently I thought, why am I at my billing rate typing updated order information and updated numbers into a report that I file so regularly I know exactly where it goes? So all of this is public documents. I gave it to Claude. I gave the last filed one to Claude. I sent in all the orders and I said, fill in these tables for me so I don't have to do it at my billable rate. And then I had to proofread it. Obviously, I had to proofread it. But the time spent keying it in is time that now the estate doesn't have to pay for.
Perfect. Perfect. So you just talked about a thing that I find really interesting, which is the premise that AI is going to save lawyers a lot of time, right? Here's the prospect. If you had a summary judgment motion, that this goes to show you how crazy lawyers are, that you say, well, I'll spend the weekend working on the summary judgment motion and I want to shake them. No, spend that time with your family. But I'm going to spend the weekend working on the summary judgment motion. It's going to take me a solid 10 hours. And then the premise is AI is going to let you do it in 2 hours. What do you do with the other 8 hours?
Well, part of it is AI can do a lot of things. It's not thinking. I think it's important for people to realize it's not actually thinking. So what you do with some of the other 8 hours is you think about strategy. Now, if I was using AI to draft a summary judgment motion, I'd start by saying, what are my undisputed facts? Can you pull those together and cite to the record for me? Why should I do that? AI can do that for me. Then I can double check that it's not making things up. But in terms of, do I want full summary judgment just on one cause of action? Those are strategies that AI can't substitute for the way our skill level is. So it's a mix of AI and human in the loop that makes for good drafting.
See, yes, with lots of exclamation points, just like the emails I love getting from you.
Man, yours are fun too. I got to tell you a Claude story last night because I was watching The Godfather. And I noticed, have either of you seen The Godfather recently?
Recently.
Yes, I have.
Okay. You know where Michael is walking down the street with Kay and he's trying to get her to marry him? All right.
After he comes back from Italy.
After he comes back from
Right.
Italy. So I was noticing Al Pacino had a limp. And so I asked Claude, am I imagining things, or did Al Pacino have a limp in that part of The Godfather? And Claude gave me this incredible explanation of how Michael had been injured before and he was recovering and it was an acting choice. So I wrote back to Claude, are you sure? And Claude said, I may have exaggerated. It's possible he was just limping. So the lesson for that is you can't trust it. You have to verify.
Yes. Yes, I agree. But, I think some of the best work product comes when you push back
Yes.
on the AI. And
Yes.
that turns it into a more collaborative kind of environment than just, oh, yeah, okay, I'll do that.
And that's Jetsons level. Pushing back is Jetsons level.
Well, it should
Yes,
be a
it is.
conversation, right? We talked about this in yesterday when we did an episode that you should be having a conversation with your AI to get the best results.
Yes.
Nancy, have you named your AI?
I haven't, but Jeff really does like asking me to ask Claude something like, how do you cook the thing of meat, tomahawk? We weren't sure how to cook a tomahawk, and I could have leafed through recipes, or I just asked Claude, how do you cook a tomahawk? And then Jeff did a beautiful job.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so when I think of the time-saving aspects, I think there's like 3 outcomes and maybe even a 4th outcome. One outcome is, all right, It only took me 2 hours to do a 10-hour project. I'm going to spend the other 8 hours accumulating more work. I'm going to increase my capacity
Yep.
so that I make more money. 100% legitimate use of AI time saving. Then there's the second one, which is I'm going to do better work. I'm going to do more thinking. I'm going to consider better causes of action. I'm going to think about maybe shoehorning a case into a better argument. I'm going to think more because now I don't have to worry so much about the mechanics of cobbling together undisputed facts. Then there's the better life. You know what? I'm done in 2 hours. I'm going home. I'm going to make a nice tomahawk dish or, play with my kids or work on my golf swing. I'm going to do something more. But I'm going to tell you my real feeling, which is that it's not going to save that much time because of what you said before, that it's going to make mistakes. And here's the thing. Good luck even using like $1,000 a month per user tool like Harvey. Good luck asking it to churn out a 25-page brief. It's not going to do it.
Let me ask you a return question, though. Let me ask you a return question. When was the last time you shepherdized by hand?
It was probably this century.
Okay. All right. For me, it was last century. Eventually, the tools will become much better. In the same way that I don't re-shepherdize what Westlaw has told me is a case that hasn't been reversed. Eventually, the tools will save us a different kind of time. But it's not there yet.
But it is time saving still. Even reviewing is far less time than creating content for you too. So it is time saving. But I think you're right, Ron. There is this expectation that it's going to save these massive amounts of time that, simply isn't the case. But that's okay. As Nancy said, it will absolutely catch up. We're only 3 years in.
Well, I think it'll allow us to do things we like to do more as lawyers, as opposed to the grunt work of like, all right, creating a motion and formatting it properly. Nobody wants to do that. But what has surprised me about the hallucination cases is that, at least for me, one of the things I always enjoyed most about lawyering was doing legal research. Like, I'm Indiana Jones and I'm going through Lexis and I'm discovering, wow, what an amazing case. I want to use that case, right? So why don't you just do the research, which is kind of fun and easy. It's a little easy. It's not that hard. And then download your cases, read them, and then feed them into your consumer level AI product like ChatGPT. Tell the AI that you only want to use the authorities I'm uploading, and then you get the benefits of them drafting without the risk of hallucinated cases.
Right, because you've bracketed the risk by saying only use these cases.
Right. It's a simple solution. So we have a segment in our show that I call the practice signal. And practice signal is real questions from lawyers in the wild to understand how the practice of law is actually changing. And so this one came out of Reddit, which is an amazing source. If you want to find out how unhappy lawyers really are, go on Reddit. It'll give you a great chance. So here's the practice signal. I'm a lawyer. I just graduated in 2024. I work for a very small practice, just 2 partners and me. And I decided I'm going to leave the firm. The partners are pressuring me not to notify clients about my departure, which seems wrong to me.
And
Am
unethical.
I wrong for wanting to follow the ethics rules?
You're never wrong for wanting to follow the ethics rules. The partners, on the other hand, have missed the point that the clients get to choose us. So if their favorite lawyer is moving to another firm, they have a right to know that. They could choose to stay with the small firm that the lawyer left. They could choose to go to where the lawyer has moved to, or they could pick an entirely new firm. But goodness gracious, it's not the lawyer's choice. It's the client's choice.
Yeah, small firm lawyers are notoriously guarded. I mean, the idea that they could lose a dime causes some of these lawyers to have heart attacks.
I bet, but it's still not right when you consider that clients deserve to have a choice of who represents them.
Okay. Right. What do you think, Heather? You think that a lawyer could get away with just like having the associate slip out the back door and then you say, well, we have a new associate that's going to handle your work?
Yeah, no, it doesn't work like that.
I don't think it does work that way either. I think especially if there's a relationship that's been
Right.
formed between the lawyer and the clients. You know, I mean, some senior partners won't even let the associates talk to clients, but in a small firm, you can't get away with that.
You really can't. And again, clients deserve to have the best representation. That doesn't always mean the most senior person. It depends on the matter.
Talking about clients while we're here, there's this case that came out not long ago that's making the rounds as like yet one more reason to not use AI,
Mhm.
which is that a judge has determined that a client's use of AI is discoverable in a criminal prosecution. How do you stop clients from misbehaving? Boy, that's a podcast topic
Woo.
all by itself.
That's a big one. And the Hepner case, which is a really well-reasoned opinion, pointed out the client was using public AI before talking to the lawyer, not under the lawyer's direction. So basically, the client was disclosing confidences to a large language model that was learning from it. It was a really bad idea. I really do think lawyers have to do a couple of things. One is to make sure in the engagement letter that you say, please don't just not talk about what I'm saying to you to other people. Don't use AI to check out whether this is right or not. Come talk to me first so that there's a little bit of bracketing of the risk there. I also think on lawyer web pages, they should warning, do not use public AI before you formulate a question to me, and I don't represent you until I've agreed to represent you.
So, okay, let's talk about there are two issues here that I wanted to go over with you.
Yes.
One of them is the engagement letters. How does using AI impact how a lawyer is going to frame their engagement letter?
I think it's important to remember that Rule 1.2 of the ethics rules say clients determine the objectives. We, as lawyers, determine the tactics. So we can decide. Now, for big things, we're supposed to consult with the clients first, but we can decide basic tactics. Am I going to wander into a law library or am I going to use Lexis or Westlaw? That's a tactic. That's not an objective. If you're going to use AI for certain things, Rule 1.4 says you're supposed to communicate with your client. So you say that for certain things in this representation, we're going to start with a draft from AI. And then, of course, we're going to make sure that that draft is realistic and has been vetted. But you can do more than that in an engagement letter. You can say, for example, instead of going through these 13,000 pages of documents by hand, we're going to save a certain amount of time by having AI do the first cut. That's going to save you likely X thousands of dollars. Then we're going to use some of that extra time that we've freed up to do a better job with the documents that we found.
One of the thoughts that I had, I'd love to get your take on this, is that in an engagement agreement, you may want to put in that during the course of the engagement, events may come up. Discovery, depositions, court hearings, motions of all different nature. And at that time, we will quote you a flat fee for that particular aspect of the engagement. What do you think about that?
I love it. You know, one of the things law firms have done a very bad job of is mining their own data about how much certain things should cost. You have all of that information if you've been billing by the hour because you've had accumulated data. This type of matter is going to cost between X and Y. This type of matter is going to cost between A and B. So you have all the data. And if you actually use algorithms to tell you not only how much certain things are likely to cost, But within the work stream of those matters, these are the things that it makes sense to feed through AI first, and these are the things that don't. You can do a pretty good job of coming up with a flat fee that is fair to you and fair to the client.
Well, because the billable hour model, which we have, whether you like it or not, we have it, that really imposes all the risk on the client.
Right.
Whereas the flat fee model imposes the risk on the lawyer. My approach is like a hybrid where you can do billable work, but if you've got a specific matter in the engagement, you'll take on the risk that sprawls out of control.
I do the same thing. For the things where I can control what I'm doing, I have a flat fee. For the things where I don't get to control it, for example, I'm in a deposition. I don't know how long they're going to take deposing me. I don't know how long they're going to question me at trial. I bill hourly for that because that time is out of my control. But for the things that uses my expertise, I know roughly how much time I'm going to put into it, and I can come up with a flat fee that the advantage for the client is it's predictable.
Of course.
And but all
Of
of these
course.
things that you guys are talking about, AI is, and the fee structures, how it's contributing to all of this is access to justice. It's going to
Yes.
have a huge impact on access to justice. And from now going forward, more and more as the tools do advance.
All right. That's so true. Access to justice. That's an interesting question. Oh, yeah. I wanted to ask this question about the client and the AI.
Yes.
Client comes into your office and you ask, have you researched this issue using AI? And the client says, well, yeah, I have. And then you ask coyly, have you destroyed and deleted all of those prompts and all of those responses? And the client says, no, I haven't. And the client just says, because those are all discoverable,
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Unless they're done through an attorney, if the client's on a frolic of her own, all of that is discoverable and probably not destroyable. It is destroyable, but it shouldn't be.
It's, well, there's no preservation of litigation letter that's been of discoverable information. So the way I try to frame this is letting the client kind of understand that he or she needs to go back home and massage their AI history.
I think another thing to worry about is the client that comes to you with a draft already done from AI, and it's horrible. And it will take you more time to undo that draft and rebuild it than it would have if you'd just done it yourself.
Although, of course, that opens the door to say, wow, good on you for doing this draft. For me to work off this draft will cost $10,000. And for me to create my own, it will cost $1,500. Tell me which way you'd like me to go.
It's like the old mechanic sign. It's more if you help. It's the exact same thing.
That's right. Okay. So this is a great segue. And I keep typing segue and it wants to talk about that device that you roll around on.
I still want to ride that. I've never ridden
ridden a Segway.
You know what? There are lots of places around the world. Go to Claude or ChatGPT. Say, I want to take a vacation where I can take a Segway ride. Give me 10 possibilities within a 2-hour drive.
After I do that, I'm also going to research hospitals.
That's going to be a whole other thing. But all right. So now it's time for us to talk. We always end, Nancy, by talking about Flintstones, Simpsons, and Jetsons. And there's a temptation in the world to view Flintstones lawyers, they're the ones who are still using their yellow pad. But that's not what the point of the segment is. The point of the segment is every lawyer self-selects. They're their own Harry Potter sorting hat. And you sort what level you want to go on. And where you think you're appropriate. And then based upon where you have decided you are, you decide if the information we're giving you is of value. So thinking in those contexts, I want to go back to the ZettaJet issue of updating forms.
Yes.
All right. So for a Flintstones level lawyer who wants to kind of squeeze a little more juice out of forms without retyping, what do you recommend as a good workflow?
I think if you have a form that has worked for you before and you feed that in, and then depending on whether you're dealing with a public platform or a proprietary closed platform. Let's assume closed platform for a second, so you don't have to worry about confidential.
You're a Flintstones lawyer. You don't have a closed platform.
All right.
You definitely don't. You don't even know what it is.
Okay, yikes, but okay. Think about the public information that's not confidential issue and say, here's a perfect example. I need to file a pro hoc motion.
Okay.
Here are samples of what's worked in this district in the past. Fill one out for me. Here's my resume. Here's the motion.
Perfect. All right. And that's a lifesaver for lawyers. And you haven't come up with any hallucinated cases.
Right. Because you're feeding it the resume.
That's right. All right. So how about the Simpsons level? Simpsons level is you've dipped your toe into AI and you're using it here and there, but you haven't created systems around AI.
Let's assume I'm drafting a contract and it's an unusual industry and I have to come up with a good force majeure clause. The way I come up with those is that I feed the question into, here's the industry, here's the risk I'm worried about, and I ask ChatGPT, and then I ask Claude, and then I ask Perplexity, and I look at the three, and I figure out from those, which language do I like? And that becomes my new force majeure clause.
Okay. So you're not using spell book or any of those tools for the Simpsons level?
I haven't been.
Okay. All right. Now,
but if you want to give me a free license, sure.
I'm pretty sure I would say Spellbook is Jetsons level.
I think it is. I think it is. But I think you can get there. I have a Flintstones level lawyer, probably the smartest guy I know. He's totally Flintstones level. And he says, yeah, we tried Spellbook at our firm once and it got everything wrong and we never opened it.
He should talk to my husband.
Well, maybe he will someday. All right. So now we're up to the Jetsons level. The question is, how do you massage or change your systems or upgrade your systems so that you're making best use of your form library?
It's a good question. I think you want to see if you can feed in other people's work and compare it to your own work and see if you can get other ideas. I wanted to talk a little bit about vibe coding because that's my new favorite thing.
What's that all about?
Vibe coding is I haven't programmed myself since, and I am really dating myself, Fortran and card readers. That's how old I am. I was preparing our taxes for our accountant, and I thought, I really don't want to create an Excel spreadsheet where I have to feed in every tax deduction by hand and hand it to the accountant. So I went to a platform and I said, I want to create something where you're going to look at all of my PDFs and you're going to put them into an Excel spreadsheet and you're going to classify them as charitable donations and business expenses and medical expenses. And after a variety of iterations, I came up with something that next year, boom, it's going to take me, 2 hours instead of a day to do all of that.
And then you can go out and work on your golf swing.
Yes, or in my case, I can practice ballroom dancing.
Oh, how not? Oh, that's Heather's bailiwick.
I like to dance.
Heather is going on a dancing cruise next week.
Heather, that's so cool. Do you compete?
No, I'm not that good.
We should talk.
All right.
Yeah, we'll follow up on the dance.
All right. Well, listen, Nancy, so great having you as a guest on this episode. Really appreciate your time and your insights. And I can't wait to do our panel and learn even more.
I had a blast. Thank you both for having me.
Thank you so much, Nancy. I can't wait for you guys' panel either. I will do a panel on AI and legal drafting with others at Maryland Legal Summit, at the MSBA Legal Summit. If you guys are at the beach, I know, Ron, you may not be there.
And that's in June, right, Heather?
June. Yeah, we are on the 10th at 1:30.
All right. We're going to have a bunch of episodes between now and then, so we'll have a lot more time to explore what that panel is going to be about. All right, everybody, until next time, enjoy, use your AI responsibly, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
That's it for today's episode of AI Tools for Practicing Lawyers. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.